Well, look, let's say this. It is a live album primarily, but it is a soundtrack as well, because we've got live recordings of concerts going back to '69. Albert Hall and Madison Square Garden again, Forum in Los Angeles. And yet we haven't put them out before. In fact, there was a plan at one point to put out a chronological live LP, which would have been fun, you know. I hadn't even thought of it in that way at all, just a sort of an appearance every now and again, really, because to me the whole thing's basically a musical, you know. And there are different sequences, you know, that make up montage or whatever, but it's not acting as such, is it really? It's just appearing and showing your face, you know. Well, there seems to have been a build all the way through, really, which has sort of overwhelmed one. But I do remember one particular point that sort of knocked me flat on the backside, so to speak. We went to the States after having not put out an album for 15 months or something, and not having been there for a year. And the very first two concerts, the first one being Atlanta, had like 53,000 people there. And the next one, Tampa, Florida, 57. And suddenly I thought, my goodness, what's going on? You know, it's crazy. Yeah. You know, it's the way that people were really just, you know, flocking to us with this great loyalty. And the sort of promoters that were saying, oh, they'll never do it. You know, nobody's going to turn up because they haven't put out any product. And it suddenly occurred to me that, you know, we had a different sort of following to most people. And, you know, it's that sort of thing is obviously very warming to the heart and the soul, you know. I think really it's, as far as groups and audiences go, groups, especially on live shows, you know, they're as good as the audience, really. The audience, I've seen some shows where the audience has been better than the group that I've gone to see sometimes. Let's put it this way. Facing the history of the group, so to speak, an album will come out, say its third LP. And there was a lot of more acoustic numbers. There's more of a total mellow mood than, say, on the second LP, which was like a rock and roll one, really. And the critics gave it a bad time because they expected us to be in sort of groove that they could relate to, you know, and it was too much of a shock. But we'd gone through changes within our own lives, and it reflected in the music as it has up to now, sort of thing, you know. And it's very encouraging to find that the audience as such can relate to those changes and still be with you. You know, that's really great. Yeah, sure. What, the sort of heavy metal thing? I think we managed to erase that sort of tag and cliche that got put on us. And around about the fourth LP, to anybody that was still doubtful about us and wondering really where we were at and everything, when Stairway to Heaven came out, they realized that we were a group that was intent on change, and there was far more of a dramatic quality within our particular brand of music than, say, the, so to speak, heavy metal groups. You know, there was more going on within the framework. Well, no. In putting the group together in the early days, you know, I had an idea of what I thought was right within those days. It didn't really matter whether it was going to sort of happen or not within one's mind, because it was so enjoyable to be playing. And one could feel the chemistry was there even from the very first day of a rehearsal, that there was something there that was definitely going to be really good and really enjoyable to be part of. We never really bothered to purposely engineer situations which we knew would be acceptable to audiences across the world. In fact, it's been quite the reverse, because, you know, we've come under the hammer a number of times just by sticking to one's guns and I mean, if one has sort of composed a certain amount of songs at one time and they've gone on an LP, because basically an LP is only where you've been, you know, collectively at that time. And obviously one knows there's a change of direction or something. Maybe a group could say, well, wait a minute, wouldn't it be better to sort of stick to the usual policy to keep it, you know, keep the identity and everything there. But we've never done this, you know. It's obviously we're very highly critical of what we do, but it's, as I say, the band is a band highly intent on change and you know, sort of ever onward, pressing as far, you know, through the boundaries as one can possibly go, you know.
Yes, sure.
Well, I think the fact was we were really, really a very earthy group. And as I say, there was this exploratory thing going on within music. And at that time, there was a lot of apathy setting in. And, well, it was just at the end of the San Francisco phase, well at the end of that.
Yeah.
And I remember that's in fact where we really took off in San Francisco. And Country Joe was on the bill and, one of the other San Francisco groups. But it'd been like a very sort of, almost like a brotherhood of groups over there.
Yeah.
And they just knew these people inside out. And suddenly somebody was there really laying it down. And of course they just reacted to it. And, the news of that particular night just spread like wildfire over the States, and suddenly we'd made our mark. Well, no, only the amount of stuff that we'd written. I mean, to be quite honest, you know, I'd been in the Yardbirds before, and obviously I had a lot of ideas that I'd built within the Yardbirds and hadn't gone down on record or anything. And I sort of, you know, worked on those a little bit as a framework, because obviously when you start a group, you've got to have a certain amount of framework unless you're going to do other people's numbers, you know. And there was obviously overtones of that, and of course that erased itself as we, you know, continued. Only at the end, because they'd, you know, Keith Ralph, bless his soul now, but it got so just generally brought down with things. I don't know what it was really underlying everything, but I remember him saying one day that the magic of that group left him when, or it disappeared when Eric Clapton left the group. It had been many, many years, you know. Obviously that was the way he saw it, the band, you know, and it was just very, very difficult. It was an uphill struggle to keep them at it, and they just didn't want to know anymore. So eventually that band split. Well, I wanted to carry on for sure because I had a certain amount of faith in, you know, there were certain reactions that one had experienced in the States, you know, with the Yardbirds and other places, Australia too, yeah. And England too. And Terry Reid was a singer that I remember having worked with on a bill, same bill that I got with, it was a Rolling Stones tour. When you think about the bill now, it's amazing. There was I Can Tina Turner Review, Terry Reid with a band then called Peter J, Yardbirds and Rolling Stones. I mean, you just don't get bills like that. But anyhow, I tried to track him down, and lo and behold, he just signed with Mickey Most. But he suggested Robert. So I tracked up to Birmingham and saw him, and I was amazed, you know, and suddenly it all started to come together in a very short time. It wasn't like a year's process of getting it all together, which seems to be the usual thing. I mean, the whole thing came together within a matter of weeks. I did. It was very strange, actually. I thought there must be something wrong with this chap, because if he hasn't got on, because, you know, the quality of his voice was really, you know, striking. I thought it must just be a personality thing. You know what I mean? I mean, he'd made records and this, that and the other in Birmingham, and I just couldn't understand what it was that had held him back. Well, I made reference to Terry Reid, and I said, you know, I think we should, you know, get together if you're interested. Come down and, you know, spend some time at my place. We'll go through some sounds and records, see if we've got the same idea, you know, if we're sympathetic, and take it on from there. Yeah. I mean, he knew what we were, you know, that there was this thing of forming a group, you know. And then, well, we seemed to get on pretty well, you know. He was very blues orientated, and of course I've been through that as well. And then I played him a lot of other things, which I planned to sort of attempt, like Babe, I'm Gonna Leave You and things like that, which, you know, had a totally different approach to the way that it had originally been done by Joan Baez. And he seemed to be into all of these things, so it was definitely on, you know. The only thing was, I remember he was doing a lot of West Coast music, which I had an aversion to, the Buffalo Springfield. Well, I just, you see, there was an image over here of the West Coast scene, and actually a lot of the bands were very, very poor. The quality was terrible, and I could understand how he'd become involved in the whole, you know, this great sort of family image of groups and everything, but you know, I wasn't about to tell him that, in fact, the music, but I actually heard it live. You know what you're saying? You see, what you're saying is broadcasting an opinion. Well, I wouldn't normally do that. I'm only doing that almost within conversation here. I mean, for instance, I'll give you two examples. Buffalo Springfield, I saw them and they had the sort of balance. Obviously, the musical content was totally different. But say, the Hollies, if one ever saw those in the old days, a perfect balance, perfect harmonies. Everything was completely routine, right down to the line. And that's how they were. Now, I went to see Jefferson Airplane, and they began their set with a bass solo, which was absolutely phenomenal. And these were in the days of the whole, apex of the San Francisco cinema. I thought, oh my God, this is going to be just the end of the world. And then when they start, and then they began playing, and I couldn't believe it. They couldn't keep time, and it was awful. It was just a great shot. But it was only a personal opinion. You see, as far as the social importance of it, the social attitude, it was very important. And so, I'm only speaking on a musical point. Well, John Paul Jones, somebody that I've worked with many times before, studio dates, and John Bonham, Robert had played with, and fought with, but in the past, and he was playing with Tim Rose at the time, him, and he was. Well, there were two people actually. It was B.J. Thomas of the Procol Harum and Bonzo. Those were the two possible drummers, you see. But when I saw Bonzo, I knew that he was definitely on. Oh, what the first sounds that I ever heard? Stan Kenton, I should think, those sort of things. But the first rock and roll thing that really turned me on when I went, wait a minute, what was that? It was Baby Let's Play House. Yeah, and that's when I wanted to play after hearing that part of this. It just sent shivers up my spine. Well, I didn't know. I didn't know at all, but I was just determined to sort of be part of it, because in those days, there just wasn't anybody playing.
That's right.
You may find one other guitarist, but he'd live about 30 miles away or something. There's no textbook, let's put it that. No textbook, which there is now. No, not really, no. They're not at all, no. And I think somebody had given a guitar to the family just soon after hearing that record, and then it just sort of happened that obvious sort of process of one day finding somebody and you had to tune it, and then one was away, Went through the rock and roll phase. Rick Nelson's guitarist, James Burton, being a great influence, Chuck Berry, then B.B. King. All these things started to unfold, all the different styles of guitar, electric styles anyway, and then becoming involved in, the classical music and really seeing the guitar as such an important instrument, and so many different approaches and styles that could be, employed upon it. I don't know. I think I probably just used to take all my frustrations out on it, like some people smash plates against walls. It was just trading things with other people, and then once one got an ear, you could hear it from records. You heard a record, and you think, well, I'll try and play that solo, and that's really how it started. I think all the other guitarists the same way too. And you started to try and emulate what you heard, and before long you could play those solos note perfect. So then you started to follow these good guitarists, so to speak, that could play in your own mind well. And the next record came out, you'd buy it, and, a day later you'd have a solo off. So bit by bit, that's the way one taught themselves, All I remember about it was taking it to school, having it taken away every time it was seen. Yeah. Trying to hide in the corner of the field to practice. I used to try and play the thing all the time, to improve. It was sort of confiscated and given back at the end of the day. But not really. Certainly not to the degree that obviously that the staff would have thought. I think but nevertheless, I would have thought one of the most important things of this music is the fact that it wasn't taught, that it is self-taught, almost like a craft, and that it has evolved through the young folk, through the street, and it's been a social statement, and so it should really go hand in hand with any academic subject. No, it didn't really occur to me at that point that that's what they would, that's what was going on within the lyrics and everything. That became evident to me through Chuck Berry and what he was singing about. And suddenly the coin dropped and I thought, wait a minute, this is what he's saying. No money down and things like that. Incredible stuff. Well, Baby Let's Play House is come and move in with me. I mean, that was 1956 or 7 or something. It just, you just didn't do those sort of things. Sin, you were, almost excommunicated from society. Well, I more so than actually the lyrical content, which hit me later, You know, as I said, it was just the the musical thing, the fact that it was so vibrant and that you could feel that they were really, not just say enjoying what they were doing. It was just a total commitment and involvement. I'll tell you one thing, at the end of Mystery Train of Presley's, you can hear him laughing. I don't know whether you've ever, just on the fader. And it's just things like that where it's like they know that they're doing something which is revolutionary almost, you know, within musical fields. And they're just so into it and committed to it. And that sort of dedication and conviction, I could sympathise with, you know. Especially when I viewed what was going on around me in other sort of music, you know, the Guy Mitchell days and things like that. It just had nothing going for it at all. I'm blown away too, to be honest. It's incredible. Yes, I do. Especially in the, you know, Jerry Lee Lewis and people like that, Eddie Cochran. You've got to remember how young they were at the time. And you say a record like Mean Woman Blues, something like that by Jerry Lee Lewis, 17, 18 years of age. Well, who's doing anything as good as that now at 18 years of age? No one. That's the point. And they were innovators. They were doing something new. They weren't relying on a whole textbook that's been laid down for them. Now, these people would, you know, something just happened at that particular point of time, you know, this whole thing, there was this whole thing blossomed within a whole collective number of people and just came out, you know. That's the thing that knocks me out when you think that, you know, like the ones that have sadly lost, like Eddie Cochran, Buddy Holly, you know, died before they were, what were they, 22 when they died? I mean, the amount of stuff that they laid down. And then when you think of the music that, say, has been laid down in the time between, and you look at the younger ones, you know, say the pre-20s, you know, there's not that much there that hasn't really been really cribbed right from blues or from rock. And that's the thing that impresses me. I don't think so, no. You know, it's scratching the surface almost at the moment, but I reckon another 5 years it's going to be. There's going to be this is what I'm saying, the younger people are going to be coming through, and then it's really all going to happen. You know, I really think it's going to be an exciting musical heritage to be looking forward to. And it's needed all this great fight that went on in the 50s and the 60s and everything else to open up the doors almost, to let the flood come through, you know, to break down the barriers. I don't know about today. Certainly at the time, you know, the social question poised by the Beatles, you know, the long hair and this, that and the other, as it was called long hair then. Well, exactly. It only got cut off because of the wars and life and things like that. But I think at the time, you know, it certainly had a lot of change went down, a lot of social barriers. Again, were broken down, class barriers, even though it may have been resented afterwards, but nevertheless, they helped to do that. And over the years that they were very musically prominent, productive, and I think there's a classic example of a group who shows so much development and maturity within their music within the years that they were together. I mean, let's face it, the early records aren't, you know, they're nothing to really write home about, but by the time they're at Magical Mystery Tour, I mean, it was really going some, you know, really. Well, you see, now you're posing the whole question of education, the whole system of education, and let's face it, as it is, it's pretty much a waste of time. As far as my own education went, I didn't really receive any education, as far as I'm concerned, until I went to an art college. And then somebody sort of started to talk to me as an individual, as opposed to like a number in a room. It was more, well, the point was, you see, at that time, within art college, there was debates, and one would, you know, people could discuss between themselves and with the staff certain aspects of what you were doing. Whereas in the bathroom at school, you shut up. That's the sort of thing that was just totally hopeless. And it wasn't long before you realised that the people that were supposed to be teaching you were fools. In these times, now I think I know it's changed quite considerably. You've got some damn good people within the education system. But as I say, as far as my own education went, that's how it was. And as far as just concentrating on one particular thing, no, I don't think it's a good thing. I think that one should be versed within subjects, but not necessarily to the degree where it's almost a specialist degree. Like I've said, trigonometry, calculus. I've never used any of that since I left school. No way at all. Well, No, not in the way that it was taught, though I have in fact become familiar with Pythagoras's approach to music and scale, which relates to mathematics. But that, I mean, I could have approached that with possibly 2 or 3 years of school tuition in mathematics. The whole thing's just it was just a silly status game to just get as many GC subjects as you could. And, you know, if you were a bright spark, you get onto university at the end. But, I can, you know, it's difficult. I don't really want to, you know, obviously this is a sort of thing that can be debated. You know, somebody could or throw a lot of points at me to sort of prove the argument. But I'm just thinking about friends of mine who were at school and the ones that carried on through university. And, most of them, carried on through a very, very, heavy academic, system and went through the whole bit. But at the end of it, they ended up doing something entirely different that didn't relate at all in one possible way to any of the education that they'd received. Well, I don't know whether it can take any at all. No. But I'm only thinking of the sort of experience that they must have, felt, you know, the first time of seeing, or experiencing like, the Ring trilogy, you know, film, or the Rites of Spring with all the Ballet Russe and all these sort of things all tied up together. You know, this whole environmental experience. I mean, let's face it, we've lost a lot that we're not really aware of in the old silent picture days. It wasn't a jangly piano, it was an orchestra in the big cinemas, and there were sound effects. Now, if you imagine some of those Cecil B. DeMille epics with orchestras and sound effects, it must have been amazing, but we just think that they had jangly pianos, but that was when it reached the, you know, the suburbs, you know. But say somebody like Hendrix, for instance, who tied up all of his sense, let's say the different, you know, approaches of rock guitar, at least, and blues, and recording too, more, facilities and what could be done, and really, really laid it down. There's something that is very sad to be lost as far as I can see, because he was really doing some amazing work, not ahead of his time, but intellectually way ahead of the others. I don't know. It sounds really pretentious. It's like a trance state, honestly. You don't think. The more you try and plan something, the more you're likely to make a mess of it. It's just like you almost have to cleanse yourself almost of all thought and everything, and then you start playing and it starts to gel with everybody else. You know, there is obviously certain amounts of direction that go on, but the more programmed it becomes before going on, especially, the more plastic it would appear. You know, there's so much improvisation that goes on, and so many times where you'll just be playing something and staccato rhythms will just fit, you know, in total synchronization. And you'd have no idea that it was ever going to be doing that. You look at each other and wink, and you know that it'd never come again, but yeah. But don't you think that most, I mean, actors themselves, when they're, I mean, I've always had the impression that an actor, when he takes on the part within a play, he becomes that person. I mean, it's just a total involvement within it. And that's just how it is with the instruments. You know, you're just totally involved in it. It's just a part of you, an extension of you, and yet sometimes maybe you're an extension of it. It's like driving a car, you're part of the machine. You know, it depends how you look at it. I'll be very disappointed because of the amount of, you know, the alchemical quality that seems to be with us, you know, and the sheer excitement that's generated within just even a rehearsal, you know. And it would be a great shame. It's a great energy source. Well, the feedback, you know, really. Well, I think the American audiences, and it has to be said, they are far more involved in the musical scene. And by that, I don't mean the image, but the creative side of it. What's being said lyrically, you know, and what sort of barriers are being sort of broken down, and boundaries, ones are being smashed by the music. They're really more interested in that, I think, than some other countries. And they really are totally, involved on an intellectual scale to what is being said. And that's how they sort of mark, the people that they sort of can relate to by what they're actually saying, in their music and lyrics. Obviously, the prime example of that is Dylan. He just captured the imagination of an age. Well, no, because you see, the whole thing is we don't do that anymore. But obviously, there comes a time when, obviously, you put out so many LPs that you want to give a taste of this, that, and the other, and give as much contrast and light and shade within a performance, especially if you play for a long time. Otherwise, people just going to get up and look at it. It's all the same sort of stuff. And at this particular point, well, the last tour, so to speak, we weren't doing that. We just did a few bars of it, and then it went into something else. Didn't even sing one verse. Well, it never stops. I never stop. Being involved in these, always writing it or playing or doing something, It's there all the time. There's no escape.
Maybe it looks like that, but it's not. Music cursing the guitar. Yeah, maybe it took a bit of time to pluck up courage for it. Yeah. Oh, yeah, absolutely. Yeah. I should have done it before, really. Well, I don't know, somewhere back down the line, but time permitting, this is the time that's right. Anyway, I thought the second Firm album was good as the first one within the framework of who was in it and everything. I mean, I suppose this one. I suppose as far as being back to form or whatever, it's certainly just guitar. There's from my end of it, it's just vocalists, bass drums and various guitars in different shapes and forms. So I suppose if they wanted to hear a guitar album, they should do it. Yeah, maybe. Yeah, it's great. It's such an arresting start, isn't it? As well, the vocals. Yeah. Well, I remember writing part of it because Jonesy was part of the writing of that riff as well, actually. So yeah, I remember doing it. No. Initially, the idea was to combine talents of myself and Paul Rodgers, and do an album and mainly get out on the road and do some touring. Just really one massive tour sort of thing, just to prove we were around and still kicking, But in fact, that sped to a second album and then another tour as well. And neither of us really wanted to get locked into a band tour situation.
Right.
Because first of all, we had a solo career beforehand, and
Right.
I was keen to start, trying some of my own ideas out in a solo capacity, Well, I guess the fact being that my, guitar was such a predominant input to Zeppelin that nevertheless there was bound to be comparisons. I know that whatever riffs I wrote, I consciously tried to make them on Zeppelin, but it's very difficult, or something that I could say, well, that's a bit like what we did before.
Right.
But then again, I've done the same since then anyway. But, I still come up with riffs because basically I'm a riff guitarist. So that's right. Solo album. And then, each album as it comes along after that will be a different project altogether.
Yeah.
So different musicians, etc. Yeah, I'll tell you why, because I don't sing.
Yeah.
I'm saving everyone, pain worse than death for not singing. Yeah, he passed the audition. Robert Plant. Oh, really good. Really good. We've been working together anyway on a few things like the Honey Drippers in the past, and I've done a couple of tracks on his album, and came down and did one on mine, Well, obviously we've got a friendship which goes way, way back, and we've got an affinity together which does. But obviously in the past, the numbers that we did, we'd work from the beginning, the initial creation of the ideas. So it's not quite like that now. No, we never used to fight that much. It would be as assertive as necessary. No, it's all right. You mean, do we fight now? We didn't used to fight then. Yeah, I know. Yeah, well, all the storyboard stuff. Yeah. Well, hopefully the music carries it without a few short skirts and all the rest of it. Yeah, I know there's been some surprising rumours going around, actually. I just come back from the States and, you walk in the room and people are amazed that you don't come in a wheelchair or something. Well, you know how over the top they are over there. Yeah, well, you do your best to relax them if it's like that,
Right.
Yeah. I just walk in the room and go, oh, God, anyway. Yeah. Well, it starts in America, then it starts in August and goes through to November. And then hopefully we'll do some dates over here, Decemberish.
Mm.
Yeah, well, yeah, early part of December. Yeah, this is done by the guy who did our video, and apart from that, I really like Aerosmith, which is what it was by. And because I think, out of all the